Back to Politics. I'm Scott Stearns.
Yes, my name is Paul Sickle. Happy Labor Day.
Yes, happy Labor Day weekend, America.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're once again from our undisclosed location.
Yeah.
And we're discussing some undisclosed activities.
Yes, indeed.
So, such as, we talk about the undermining of Obamacare.
Yeah.
Somewhat undisclosed.
There's a lot of bad stuff going on.
Yeah, what's going on with that? Why don't you give us a little skinny on it?
So, I mean, it's been reported in multiple places, but basically they're slashing spending on advertising and promotion. Mm-hmm. They already are planning on cutting enrollment in half for this year. So I think it used to be 90 days, now it's going to be 45 days to do open enrollment.
Period. Okay.
And now they're completely slashing the budget. So
people are not going to know that their enrollment period's up.
Last year, I believe it was $100 million that they spent last year, and they're slashing it down to $10 million for outreach and promotion.
Right. Okay.
Because their excuse for doing so is that, like, well, there's enough notice out there, people know about it, so there's no need for the promotion. Although we all know, I mean, there's a reason why, like, if you work for a company, for instance, there's a reason why they have people come every year. They have outreach to the employees. It's not like when open enrollment comes at your company that they just kind of like put out. Like,
people know when the United Way drive is that it happens every year. Everybody knows that
they hammer you over the head, like, hey, get involved.
Everybody knows that Girl Scout cookies are sold every year, but they don't remember to order them unless somebody's mom knocks on your door and says, my daughter's selling the Girl Scout cookies.
That's what it requires.
Right.
So by slashing the promotion budget on this thing, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy where the enrollment they're probably hoping will drop, and then they'll be like, see, it's not working. Right. We need to get rid of this.
So with that, the challenge, though, goes right back then to... this is all stuff that C3 nonprofits could do. And especially this would be something where, a lot of those disease groups that were really concerned about Obamacare, the people that like to do the race for the cure and all that. And there's a lot of suspicion that not a lot of that money actually does, or even if it does get spent on research, too much of it gets spent on
administrative costs and everything else.
Well, or even subsidizing the pharmaceutical companies to a large extent.
I'm sure it does.
And so the question would be, would these groups that, the American Cancer Society, the Heart, American Heart Association, I'm thinking more of the disease groups, especially, the ones that do all the 5Ks and the 10Ks. And
Susan Komen, all that kind of stuff. Yep.
There's a whole bunch of them. And they raise lots of money around it. And the question is, why not raise money around enrollment awareness?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what better way to prevent the spread of disease than potentially allowing 5 to 10 million more people a year to have the access to a health policy that they can purchase that would meet their needs.
Well, and that might be the reaction. I mean, that would be my hope, is that, okay, if the government, if the Health and Human Services Department is not going to spend the money that it takes to get the promotion out there, to get the awareness that's required out there for people to sign up, well, then hopefully it falls.
I'm a little suspicious.
It will fall to these other organizations.
I'm suspicious. I think the responsibility definitely falls on these organizations.
Yes.
The question is whether they'll step up to do so.
Well, they have a self-interest in doing it.
You would think so, but okay. For instance, I would argue in states like Wisconsin where we had voter ID.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the responsibility for a robust voter engagement program around ID education, because you can't trust Scott Walker's government to do the education they're required to, and they clearly, they didn't just fail to do it, they refused to do it, even though they were ordered by the court to do so, to educate people about it.
Right.
That's where the NAACP needs to step up. That's where, Voces de la Frontera at the local level, Council of La Raza, that's where the League of Women Voters ought to be, all over the place. And I'm not saying that there wasn't an effort, but it clearly was not robust enough. And maybe these organizations that I keep calling on are stretched and they can't do it. But I could tell you, for one, I know that the amount of money that's raised by a lot of these disease groups is unreal. And there's a lot of, and frankly, it's easier to raise money for tax-deductible purposes and all of these things, like voter ID compliance, and certainly health awareness of your own health care.
Yeah.
That takes it beyond a partisan lens. And sometimes I feel like some of these groups are reluctant to even do what's good policy because it'll be seen as somehow partisan, but it's not. It's allowing people access to the franchise in the case of voter ID.
Yeah.
In the case of this, it's allowing people access to their basic health care needs. If your group is dedicated toward stopping the spread of diabetes or heart disease or God knows what else,
then you should want people that have health care.
You ought to be able to
That's part of your mission statement.
That's got to be the first step.
Yep.
And maybe you're spending your annual budget, your goals like last year, in your report in the previous years was to support some sort of robust disease prevention, some novel stuff, maybe some breakthrough research. You know what? Maybe now that may be the case.
Yeah.
It may be time to reassess those goals.
Yeah.
And to reprioritize and say, you know what? We're going to make sure that we prevent, 500,000 severe diabetes cases or whatever by making sure people are signed up for the health care.
Let's set some new benchmarks.
That's how we're going to do it.
And
that may mean scaling back some of the diabetes research, but that ought to give you the impetus then to get more politically active on the other end of things.
Yes.
So that this kind of crap stops.
No, you're right, and I think that will be the interesting thing to watch. Is if they are going to slash it from 100 million to 10 million for promotion, then who's going to pick up the ball and run with it? This is where
that would be a big freaking story.
I think so,
and it would shame the administration.
Right.
It would shame the administration in changing its tune.
I don't know that it would, to be honest, because I think what their response would be. They would be like, okay, we believe in the private sector, and so if promotion can happen in the private sector amongst these private organizations, that's where it should be. That will result in less of a burden on the taxpayer.
It may not. Okay, it may not shame them, but I dare them to face the political consequences. It will definitely cost them then.
Well, you're right. If it translates into, like you're saying, like the cost shifting, if it means that there's less money spent on research, if that's the consequence of it, that there's less money spent on research and more money having to
make a big deal. This year, the AIDS Walk people are going to take $20 million out of the $60 million they raised and put it just into letting people know about.
Just to make sure that people have health insurance that have the opportunity to have it.
Awareness. Yes. So that fewer people die of AIDS.
Yeah.
Because that's really the upshot of it.
Of course.
Right?
Well, that's the goal.
And unfortunately, we have to do this rudimentary stuff, which the government ought to be doing.
Right.
Fine. You know what? If Trump feels no shame, that's fine. But let him explain that to the American people.
Yep.
And if he doesn't make it through the administration, let Mike Pence, who will really try to explain it.
Right.
Let Paul Ryan talk about. Let's put Paul Ryan on the record too while we're at it.
Yes.
He's in Congress holding the purse strings. Maybe Paul Ryan decides this is too big of a risk for me politically, and now I'm going to try to override the president's veto.
No, I wouldn't hold my breath on that, but yeah, maybe.
Well, Republicans are said to be very interested in bucking the president.
Well, particularly
more so than before.
Particularly the senior senator from Arizona. It was
obviously, Mr. Thumbs Down. It's the most heroic thumbs down in years.
He seems to, based on the statements he's putting out, I think he's just enjoying being the thumb in the eye.
He really does not like
to Trump right now. I kind of feel like I feel like when he came back.
We're talking about John McCain here.
Yes, Senator John McCain. When he was diagnosed with cancer, and he was in Arizona, and he came back. That was a big deal in the media.
That speech was clearly foreshadowing.
Of course. So he came back, but he came back, and everybody was like, "Oh, okay, he's going to be the deciding vote to make sure that the motion to proceed to the healthcare repeal bill goes through. So, yay, John McCain.
So he did
Trump,
do that.
Trump was celebratory about it. But I feel like he knew all along what he was going to do.
He just voted against the final measure.
But he laid it out there like, yeah, I'm coming back. I'm going to vote to see this thing through. But then I think he had it in his mind that at the end game was going to be, I'm going to vote this thing down just as a big middle finger to Trump.
Yeah. I mean, the one person I think he kind of sold out a little bit on it was Heller.
Or Jeff Flake, the junior senator from Arizona, who's also
tough shit. Those guys didn't have the courage.
Well,
they knew these are
they should be learning some lessons.
Moderate Republicans who are facing really what could be stiff re-election challenges next year, and they voted against what appears to be the direction their state's going politically.
Right.
I'm not so convinced that Arizona is that swingy. Like, there's still some underlying conservatism.
Well, Nevada's ahead of the game.
Nevada, though, is moving into a blue state territory.
Well, yeah, they voted for Obama, which Arizona did not do.
Clinton.
So, yep.
And by increasing margins, usually.
Yeah. So, if anybody should have been ahead of the game, it should have been Dean Heller. And he just obviously being,
He's up for re-election. Now, supposedly...
This is his first term that's up.
Right.
At this point. So he's somebody who should be taking lessons from a guy like John McCain. Like, okay, sometimes you got to have some level of foresight and be like, stop looking in the rearview mirror and what happened last year and start thinking about where things are going.
So as we're speaking, of course, North Korea is doing more scary things.
Yes, that's there were tremors measured tonight, and they're
more
on a level of an earthquake, but it looks like it was their sixth nuclear test.
And interestingly enough, they're doing this as the nation's eyes are appropriately focused on Hurricane Harvey and the victims of that in Texas, and the possibility of another Atlantic hurricane coming short, Irma.
Yep. It's going to make its way up the East Coast, it looks like, in the next
week
or
if
so.
it goes up to the East Coast, it'll probably be more benign, most likely. But, this happened at the same time. And one thing you pointed out is that we can't really add a lot of insight to it because we just don't know the details.
Yeah, it's just breaking within the last hour of us recording this.
Right.
So.
By the time you're listening to this, it has gone down as another cheap ploy by Kim Jong-un.
Right.
I hope that's how it goes. Either that, or it'll be a full-blown crisis.
No,
we'll have more information then.
We'll probably move on from it because Trump will have addressed it through some snarky tweet, and will have said something exclamation points,
do you think those,
caps, blah blah blah.
So that'll help us move on from it.
Well, the media is going to follow whatever the shiny object is. So there'll be
but do you think a snarky tweet, if anything, is the kind of thing that I would think would lead us more toward a full-blown international crisis rather than moving on from it?
Well, we shall see, I suppose.
So there's that.
Otherwise, we're coming up on Labor Day coming up on Monday.
Right.
So
as the nation does recover from Hurricane Harvey, I will admit, part of me always thinks that I'd like to get on this, if I was a senator, get on the floor and be like, I gotta say this is an important measure and these people's lives depend on it. But especially if I was from New York, when Hurricane Sandy hit us, we got told that, there's too much pork barrel. Maybe the free market should, everybody in Texas seems to really want the free market to sell things. Maybe it should just clean up from hurricanes.
Yeah, I mean, you had both Texas senators, Ted Cruz being one of them, oppose funding for Hurricane Sandy, and then you had Mike Pence when he was in Congress, when he was in the House, giving speeches about how it's important to take care of the people down in New Orleans, but it shouldn't burden the future generations and this and that and all this horse shit that now obviously is from him.
So personally, I mean, it's important that we would even have conversations like this.
Yeah.
The part where I think there may be some legitimacy would be to say that we're throwing money at this problem, but there is a climate problem, which may very well be part of contributing to these increasingly frequent 100-year floods. They seem to be like 100-day floods.
Well, yeah, and there's stronger storms, and it's just
right.
It just seems like
and overdevelopment and areas that probably shouldn't be overbuilt.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've spent any time in Houston, they do not utilize their space.
They don't have a good land use policy.
Not so
They've
much.
They've built on a few wetlands. You're saying?
I don't want to say the whole community is at fault like that. There are people, and there certainly are efforts at sustainable development.
But there's good
in
people
Houston
everywhere
as well.
But,
and good projects everywhere, and good leadership too. Mm-hmm. But it's worth noting that this is the kind of thing government must do,
of course,
and always must do, whether it's in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Florida, or Texas, or anywhere in between.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that if we
our territories, for that matter,
we of course we should be concerned about future debt burdens, but we ought to be concerned about the future debt. Both financial
this falls under
and
the umbrella of national defense.
Right. We ought to be concerned about the future burden of climate change.
I don't care how much of a gung-ho libertarian you are. You may dispute what we just talked about a few minutes ago about healthcare. That's fine. Whatever. We can disagree as reasonable people. But when you're talking about hurricane relief or some other disaster, whether it be terrorist related or otherwise, you cannot just sit there and talk shit and talk about how it's not in my backyard. So those people from New Jersey are good at wasting money. So I don't want to support their cause. Like, come on, we're one country and we got to take care of one another.
Well,
when these things happen.
Well, I think that's true. When we talk about being concerned about the debt or whatever, we can mention that it will add to the debt, but we should also mention about the climate debt, the environmental debt, that is actually going to contribute far more to the financial debt and the human cost
in the long term.
In the long term,
absolutely.
And that long term,
but they're not willing. They're not willing to engage in that discussion.
And
that's
we're not
off the table
talking
for
about
them.
100 years anymore. We're talking a few years down the road.
We're talking
basic actuarial stats here. This is like getting to a point where I think actuaries looking at the cost of insuring prices are having to reassess whatever the premiums are.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so the next and now final thing, I think that was our penultimate topic, and this would be our final one of the day, would be it is Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that means a little bit more than just brats and burgers and a flag and a parade.
Yeah, and a day off of work.
Right.
What would you have to say to our listeners about what we could what we should be focusing on now that we're coming up on Labor Day?
Well, I think it's time to focus on where is the power of labor and what is the value of labor to you. Yeah. Not just obviously your own labor, but the labor other people perform. I feel very strongly that it's too often devalued in our society, and I think that that's always a temptation. Who wants to pay more?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think that this kind of mentality about, well, we'd rather have lower costs and better labor rights has ultimately leads to we all wind up fighting over less and less, and the people at the top wind up getting more.
Yeah.
So obviously, we're going to have. I'm going to be part of a large morning demonstration. There's at least the strongest candidate, in my opinion, to take on Paul Ryan is going to be one of the speakers.
Randy Bryce,
and we're going to be celebrating cooperative labor management agreement with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay.
As part of our thing, Randy Bryce is going to speak at it. And then Firefighters Union President Malin Mitchell will also be speaking at it. It is now rumored that he's a candidate for governor. There's a draft Malin page.
There's a draft movement afoot.
I couldn't be more in favor, and I say that at the risk of making it sound like we're
endorsing
it. We're not. But I will say this: I don't see anybody else right now who has what I think we're going to need to beat Scott Walker.
That level of enthusiasm?
I'm not sure Malin has it either, but I do know this. He's got more of it than any of the others that I've seen so far.
Okay.
And I also know almost all the other candidates bears strong resemblances to other candidates we've run before.
To other people that have lost
to Walker lost
Yeah.
to Tommy Thompson. They look like 42 to 46 percenters,
Yeah.
which is about what we wind up getting in these governor races, about 46% usually.
Definition of insanity, right? We keep on doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, I just, I mean, some of them are... Andy Gronick said some intelligent-sounding things the other day about Foxconn, I thought.
He did, but you know what? I mean, he was right there when the big announcement came out. He was totally in favor of the thing until he wasn't. So
Yeah, well,
that leads me to believe that that leads me to be a little skeptical of what he's doing.
And then there's and the other one that I thought I've been kind of following is Vinehout.
Yeah.
And she's got some populist appeal, but again, she shows a little to no capacity to build an effective organization that we need to win.
She's run before and obviously hasn't succeeded, so we'll see.
It didn't even come close.
Right.
That's the thing. She came...
She was overshadowed. I mean,
she was,
credit,
but she didn't...
I mean, she was running when Barrett ran, and he was kind of...
Okay, but if you're overshadowed by Tom Barrett, what does that say?
But there was, there's this coronation mentality a lot of times in primaries, and people lock up the resources early on.
But Kathleen Falk got 34% of the primary vote that year.
Yeah.
I mean, in Falk, Vinehout got 4%. It's hard to completely take her seriously.
Sure.
That said, I'd like to be surprised.
Yeah.
And if she wants to surprise me, then that'd be great.
Well, that might be what it takes for a Democrat to get elected governors to put some surprises out there, to have some happy surprises.
So I shouldn't say that none of them strike me as clearly having what it takes to beat Walker. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's room to be surprised.
Yeah.
But I think Malin adds at least one more that I think could surprise you. Because he did some damage as a candidate for lieutenant governor. Yeah. And he's got that statewide appeal. I'm a little partial, obviously. I worked with him on pension security stuff. He was kind of an expert on that.
Yeah.
And he got groups together, including very conservative police union members, to get behind a common set of principles on how we address pension issues. And as a result, the pension system in Wisconsin is one of the strongest in the country, and one of the only things left unscathed by Scott Walker.
And it's pretty solvent, compared to our neighbors to the south. So,
but Walker was talking about trying to reform it from the get-go, from day one. He's talked about it, and all his the conservative think tanks were gunning for it from day one.
Translation: they were trying to undermine it.
They were trying to undermine it, absolutely, and they have not been very successful at all. To say they've chipped at the edges would be being generous to them.
They were successful at other things like the Act 10 and the right to work stuff. So as we enter Labor Day in Wisconsin, we're living under the umbrella of those of that legislation.
Interestingly, Act 10 was seen as a way to really take out the defense of the pension system.
Yeah.
So that then you could really sink it.
Sure.
By sinking labor first.
Yeah.
They got most labor underwater. However, what was left was able to defend the pension system. That's
a good thing that we should.
Going back to Malin, I'd say that was no small part due to his leadership.
Well, that's good. All right.
With that.
So Wisconsin, happy Labor Day.
Yeah.
Enjoy your cookouts, enjoy all those things, and keep your eye on the ball.
Right.
And forward.
And celebrate workers, your work, and the work of others.
Yes.
Thanks. Forward.